Our next panelist is Jennifer Potter, who has served as the Hawaii Public Utilities Commissioner since March of 2018. Commissioner Potter is also a resident of Maui County and is committed to achieving Hawaii's ambitious renewable energy goals in a manner that benefits Hawaii's people. Given the statewide goal of 100% renewable energy by 2045 and the related goal of electrifying transportation in Hawaii, we need to significantly accelerate innovation. My question for you is similar to the last one I asked Jason. How can the isolated electric transport and telecom grids found within Maui County and on Molokai be utilized to promote and validate innovation?
I want to thank you all so much for your excellent presentation so far and then asking me to join you today. So it's a pleasure to be here. And thank you for the very complex and complicated question. I appreciate it. So I want to first begin with the concept, and one thing that rang absolutely true yesterday during the status conference that Todd was speaking about earlier was that, one size does not fit all. And it certainly, it's like there's a path from A to B, but it is not necessarily a straight line. And this is definitely the case with Molokai, and it's also the case with Maui County in general. And so there's a unique community in Molokai that just really has a strong and persistent voice that's developed over, as Todd mentioned, the last decade. And developing community groups that have come together to speak their truth and to express the needs of their community. And that has been innovative in its own right. I mean, this is something that, we look at some of the other islands and they can be virtually silent on issues that are imperative to the well-being of their community. And that's just not the case on Molokai. So we already have innovation from the get-go. But then now I want to tell a story very quickly, and it pertains to how we actually create innovation. And back in the 1980s, there was at that point in time, refrigerators were actually the largest consumer of electricity in a residential home. And the Department of Energy and the federal government at that time created a challenge for appliance manufacturers by offering them almost a $2 million reward for improving the efficiency of refrigerators. And so many appliance companies came together and worked together and created an unpatented design for refrigerators that essentially reduced the electric demand of those appliances by 75%, which is monumental. And today we have, it's a very small fraction of the total energy that's consumed in individual homes, unless you have a very old one, in which case contact Hawaii Energy because they can help you out on a rebate or get you a new refrigerator. So, but the idea at that point was, is that innovation follows incentives. And those incentives can come in the idea of whether it's social justice, it's just philanthropy, or it's actually monetary dollars to different organizations to basically make investments or to promote the development of untested or new ideas around energy and telecom, water, etc. So, for example, there's a new methodology that's been tested in Sweden about wastewater treatment plant that utilizes plants in this hydroponic type area to process wastewater in a way that's much more environmentally friendly, captures carbon. And so how can we bring those types of technologies to Molokai to be tested, and ultimately offer either incentives for those types of programs or can just offering kind of a test bed in a closed, isolated environment where you have, a pretty constrained resource for water, as you discussed earlier. Other ideas that come to mind and knowing some of the energy needs for Molokai, and in particular end-of-line energy needs, where we have some reliability and resiliency issues and just power quality issues. One of the things that the Commission's been working towards, and actually is only the second state in the United States to create a microgrid service tariff, and we'll continue to work on this. But the idea would be to develop, microgrids at the ends of these lines, and if there could be grants and opportunities, there would be an opportunity for local residents to be trained up as microgrid operators, and that would be able to service homes and provide jobs and some security to residents, and to also provide backup for those power quality issues that we're seeing on the island. Of course, we have a tremendous challenge of getting to 2045 in the renewable energy environment, and I think when we think about how we've done this to date, and including the last, I think it's about 12 PPAs that we've signed, there's been very, very little community interaction. I mean, you maybe have 12 people show up to some of these meetings. So they're not making decisions on behalf of the community. The community's voice isn't being heard. And a lot of the times it's because there's just not notification to the community that these are even happening. I know that they have a project that's being developed in my backyard, and I had no idea at all until the PPA was placed in front of me. And I was just like, is this how this works? So it's a real wake-up call, in thinking about how these projects are even being developed in Maui County. How are we being made aware? I think yesterday in particular was a perfect example of innovation, of being able to bring together several groups of, the consumer advocate, the co-op, the HUI, the commission, HECO, and to sit down at a table and to voice those concerns and to talk about ways to proceed and move forward in a way that's going to be consistent with the needs of the community. And that's innovation in itself. And that did not require any type of incentive. That was just truly the remarkable work that's been done on Molokai that's really incentivized and moved and propelled, these types of actions. So there's a tremendous amount of opportunity as well with the electrification of transportation, that Molokai could serve as a test bed for providing not only vehicle to grid type integration, where vehicles could provide grid services. As we go to renewable energy, there's going to be instability on our grids that is going to need to be addressed through other renewable resources that are more flexible. And so those types of tests have been done primarily in California and not in an isolated grid situation. And California has been trying to develop microgrids as well, but they haven't integrated sort of the goals of electrification of transportation into that. So there's opportunities there for that to become a testing ground alongside of electric vehicle chargers, and how those would be dispersed on an island that has pockets, it has load pockets, but they're actually distributed around the island. And so in a way of like, how do we get from point A to point B, and how are we serving that load and the demand there? Which came up yesterday about, centralization of power versus decentralized power. And I think it's really important that we take those into consideration, because things that we've been doing by the book with decentralized power plants, and then we talk about diversifying and going to DERs, that hasn't necessarily manifested in Molokai because some of the constraints that you faced as a result of this, the way that your grid is structured. So thinking about innovation as it relates to how we deliver energy to consumers is coupled with how consumers are actually utilizing energy as well. And so we need to be marrying those ideas of how is it that we can create a structure within Molokai and Maui County in general that harmonizes those two, the supply and the demand, in a way that can really benefit the people that are there and also provide jobs. So vehicle to grid, you would need mechanics that could work on electric vehicles. You would need people that could service the electric vehicle stations, charging stations. So as we continue to see technology evolve, hydrogen could come into play and could be an excellent resource on the island of Molokai, so that, we have alternative resources that are clean energy resources. So there's a whole host of ideas of how, how to kind of create this innovative test bed on the island that I can't necessarily get into, and I may not even have the right answer anyway. So, but the idea that there's so much work that's already been done by the residents of Molokai to represent the community interest is innovative in and of itself for the Hawaiian Islands. So.
Mahalo for calling it truly what it is, innovative. Yesterday was unprecedented, as Todd said, and truly innovative. And hopefully it's also precedent setting in uplifting other communities to do this kind of work in decentralizing. So mahalo for yesterday. And for those in the audience that don't speak acronym, PPA is Purchase Power Agreement, and DER, I'm guessing, is decentralized energy.
Yeah, distributed energy resources, but basically the same thing. Yeah. Sorry about that. I couldn't say earlier.
Just keeping everyone on the same page.
Thank you.
Sharing is awesome. Mahalo. And my last question is, you kind of touched upon this already, but would you say that this approach offers opportunities for economic diversification?
I absolutely would. And I do think that there are, as I mentioned, as we continue to evolve in the energy spectrum and even in the telecommunications space, there are going to be a tremendous number of jobs that are going to require skilled trade people to come and to work on the islands. And rather than importing them from elsewhere, let's ensure that we can keep it local and that we can keep those jobs for the people of Molokai, because there's absolutely no reason why others should move here and take over ownership in a place that has so much respect for the Aina, and that that really is truly looking out for the best interest of all the residents on the island. And so to keep that same sentiment is imperative. And there's one of the things that one of the state goals, I'm just going to add this as an aside, but one of the state goals around for decarbonization, for basically carbon neutrality in particular, I mean, we can think about how Molokai could diversify how land is being utilized to have carbon sinks in areas where agricultural wouldn't be necessarily a possibility. And there would be a potential economic opportunity, not only for providing that service, because there is a social cost of carbon that we are identifying and we are now actually truly grasping and putting to the books, but provide jobs for those types of that really do not only improve the conditions of Molokai in terms of just carbon mitigation, but at the state of Hawaii as a whole and also the globe. So we all have to work together and battling this climate change and thinking about those opportunities for economic diversification through agriculture, through energy, through water, wastewater treatment, and through, there's a host of, we're evolving so quickly. And so how can we make sure that we stay on board and in touch with what those needs are? And I have no doubt that this community can do that. It's absolutely the one that can, if there's anyone. So definitely appreciate the question.
Mahalo, Jennifer. And, I think it would be appropriate right here to give a shameless plug to organizations that are doing that work in investing in workforce development within their communities, such as Makahana Ka'ike and Hana and the Makaha Learning Center on Oahu. Ho'ahu has been meeting with them to try to figure out how we can also use that model and that inspiration on Molokai as well. Mahalo.